Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. Thank you for joining us today for this Exemplary Catholic Leaders series. My special guest today is Jeff Schiefelbein, who runs Undivided Life. He's the founder of something called Undivided Life. So, Jeff, how are you today? Welcome.
Thank you very much, Henry. I am incredible and blessed, and life is never that easy, but we always have promise if we follow the path of Christ. So it's worth the battle.
Well, I certainly agree with you 100%. So, very glad that you're with us today. So, let's start. Let's jump right into an important topic that I think everyone is always interested in. What's your faith story? Where did you come from? What are you doing with your faith now? How did it all come about, Jeff?
You bet. So I'm the youngest of four children. My parents grew up in the Catholic suburbs of Chicago, and then I grew up generally in Texas since I was five. Born in DC, moved to Texas. But I share that because it was always expected that in our family we were Catholic, cradle Catholic, and that you would go to your CCD class, you would go to Mass. And I looked ahead and could see that I would go have a career after college, and then I would become a 65-year-old Catholic usher. That the trajectory was just from wherever I was at confirmation time to someday being the guy opening the door with my maroon blazer. That was the plan. And God had other plans. I certainly tried to see what the other side of the world looked like, if it was chasing and idolizing money, or dating, or trying my hand at fame, and um, really kind of what would all the riches and the worldly things give to me. And I was doing this all throughout kind of my late teens and early 20s, all still going to mass and knowing that I was on this trajectory.
Mhm.
And Henry, I just kept finding that it didn't satisfy. It left me hollow and wanting and longing. And at the same time, I would say yes to and try things that were available either in my parish life or through friends, and found the right Bible studies and the right small groups. And then went on pilgrimage, went to the Christ Renews His Parish retreat, eventually found my way into daily Mass. And as I experienced the sacraments and the community that can be built whenever you're doing this from a place of faith, while at the same time trying the other side, right? Trying to see what it would be like to live in the worldly riches, I found the love that satisfies, and the one that filled me up as a human being and seemed to satisfy a calling and a yearning and a longing in my heart. And it must have been right around the time that I met my wife and then got married, now 13, 14 years ago, that I really had this conversion of heart and mind. And I crossed, I don't know, some sort of a chasm where I could never go back to being lukewarm, cafeteria style, or passive about my faith. That it absolutely became that for the love of Jesus Christ, and therefore the love of his church and all else, faith would come first, spouse would come second, kids would come third, and then all the other things that I got a chance to be a part of or to do were details of the rest. And I have been joyfully navigating a complex life ever since, but I'm too smart to ever be stupid again. But at the same time, I'm smart enough to know that I got a whole lot to learn in this pathway of trying to grow in my relationship with Christ and to learn and follow in his footsteps.
This is, it's so exemplary to hear you say this, and I know that what you're saying resonates with a lot of people. There, we sometimes do this. We have a lukewarm feature to our life, and but something happens. You've crossed a chasm. Something important happened to your life, and so you've jumped across that chasm, and you're now let's say you're heavily focused on getting yourself, your family, your wife, your children to heaven, and so to do that, though, you have to make it a living. You're trying to earn some income. You have to support your family, and you've got this undivided life thing going on. And what is that? And what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, thanks. For the last 25 years, I've been starting companies or leading turnarounds, all with this very entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial spirit. And I found along the way that I was using the same playbook over and over, regardless of if this company was for profit or nonprofit or a startup or a turnaround, public or private, whatever it may be. And in that journey, as I was telling you, I got deeper and deeper into my faith. There was all these books and articles and things that were formidable for me. They were the breakthrough moments in addition to my prayer life and my life with my wife, Amanda. And one of them was called The Vocation of the Business Leader. It was a 30-page PDF that was put out by a group out of Minnesota. And in reading this, the very first cover page, I can remember talking about what happens when you live a divided life, like how that puts you into a place of not having integrity and to being at odds with yourself, having to wear these different hats. And it goes on to explain the Catholic social teachings of subsidiarity and common good and justice and just wages. And I realized in that reading and in several other books that Jesus Christ and the Catholic Church had already put the right words and context to this playbook that I had been running. Like I was the practitioner of the philosophy and the church history and the Catholic view of Catholic social teachings. All these things, I was the practitioner of something that had already been written down and documented. So I was running for about 12 years an energy consulting firm that I was one of the co-founders of. And I just felt this calling on my heart. It was time to step away from the energy world and away from this one specific company and to bring this concept to as many people as we could, to build really great businesses where you could have both scalable growth and workplace excellence using these principles that, again, were being taught in books like Virtuous Leadership and The Pope and the CEO, all these formidable books for me. And so a year and a half ago, my partner and I launched Undivided Life as a consulting firm, consulting primarily around strategy and culture. So that's management consulting. But that's just one arm of it because we believe Undivided Life is a way of doing business. It's a way of showing up in the world, putting first things first and taking care of the people, infusing human dignity into all the organizations that we're part of. So we do consulting. To go along with that, we have leadership development and courses that we provide, and a lot of keynote talks and workshops that I do. And then we have a whole lot of folks that work with us or that we partner with because we also own a holding company where we are launching brands, whether it's service or product. We're actively pursuing the purchase of other companies. You think about like a baby boomer's business that needs to have a succession plan and nobody's there to come in. We want to come in and buy and continue to build and then bless. So buy, build, bless. And then we want to look at incubating and or venture studio work for folks that have great ideas but don't have the resources. So Undivided Life is really a way of life or a way of business that's an umbrella for consulting and for, again, actually being the folks that roll up their sleeves and launch and lead companies.
Yeah, it's music to my ears. We talked before this broadcast today. We've talked about this, and I used to do consulting work and in the secular world, and on a few occasions we could go deeper than just helping somebody get rich and get all the toys and that sort of thing. And when we started the Catholic CEO, a similar thing came to our mind. Can we be Catholic and successful in business? And yes, we can be. And so I love what you're doing because you're making it possible for someone to, be the Catholic that they should be, but do business and participate in the economy. We're not a silo. We're going to be a strong positive force in the economic system. And in a certain way, I think we can resist the culture. Is that a fair statement? Would you agree with me that we can resist the culture a little bit?
Yes. And when you said the word positive force, the image that came to me was the magnet, right? The magnet is not just to bring people in. The magnet also has a repelling side, right? The positive and the negative.
Yes.
So you could say as the magnet, we repel away from the negative culture, but there's also people who don't want to work with us. I just found out the other day that I was not selected to give a speaking gig that would happen just a few days later.
Mm-hmm.
And I would venture to say that this group was very excited about me until a few other people got involved and they started to look at my LinkedIn presence and realize that I'm not afraid of representing my true devotion to Christ through my Catholic faith. And so I got rejected in that. I was the part that was on the negative end of that force. And Henry, I'm okay with that. That's actually part of this puzzle is to just stand firm in my belief and not be all things to all people, but to truly stand in the integrity of living an undivided life. And so, yes, I've seen countless people. They're my business heroes, are the ones who are living it at home, in their community, in their daily walk with our Lord, and in that their businesses end up being successful. And you can bless a lot of people through your business, probably more so than just writing checks. It's how do you lead and help others to develop to be who God called them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We can pay a price. We do, and I know what you're talking about. I've lost friends, and I've got people who certainly, gradually they fade away. They don't contact you anymore because they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, this guy's doing Catholic stuff." Yikes. So, um, but we can't count the cost. To follow our Lord, we don't count the cost. We just do it. And so I'm really impressed with what you're doing. Let's talk for a minute then, Jeff, about what happens, out there in the business community. You're looking at companies, you're going to acquire businesses, and so you see people running businesses, Catholics or not, Catholic focus or not. What's happening in the business world in the U.S. and in let's say the Western culture today that you see that is a problem or a challenge, or that simply is a factor right now?
Yeah, I think that people have become not people, they're just commodities, right? I know it's cliche to say people are our best assets, so I'm not really picking on the words, but people are not assets. People are unique, uh, beautiful human beings who deserve to be treated that way. And when we start to make them just assets, we can burn them out in the way that we work them. We can refuse to show them a proper level of respect in the authority and autonomy we give to people, in the appreciation and challenge, in the ways that we even have difficult conversations with someone can become so undignified because now we're treating them more like a write-off or something you can just remove from the balance sheet. So what you see that's antithetical to that all the time is people are attracted to knowing that you can create a workplace like what we describe in Undivided Life, where dignity is at the forefront of everything we do. We're promoting these life values about how people are designed, what makes them tick, what is a place that you can get the multiplicative effect of many people. So you don't have to be Catholic to be attracted to that. You don't even have to be Christian. I find people all the time who they know our beliefs and they know that our beliefs are what drive us. But what they really like is the outcome that says this could be a place where human beings are being formed and where people are excited. That thank God it's Monday culture
Mhm.
is what everybody really wants if they know it's possible, but they've been beat down enough that many of them don't even realize that it's sitting right there in front of them.
Yeah, it's well said, well said. One of the questions that I often get, maybe you get it too, probably you do. It's the one about, well, if you're going to run your business in Catholic fashion, that means you're going to do more than the minimum the law requires, let's say, or the regulatory system requires. Therefore, you're not going to make any money. What's your answer to that, Jeff?
Yeah. So even when I had non-Catholic business partners, I ran everything using Catholic principles. And what you found was a above average, I mean, at the most excellent levels of engagement and ownership from the team members that are treated that way, that are given that freedom and respect and dignity. As an example of that, I've even in huge corporations told people that the vacation policy underneath my work group was you're a grown man or woman. Like, let's just take care of our business and make sure that first things come first. And what you find is that when people have extra capacity, or if one of their teammates goes down with an illness or a tragedy, they they scoop up the work for each other. They don't look over their shoulder saying, not my problem or what's in it for me. They start to have a we're great mentality and we have a worthy adversary or a worthy goal. And so a highly engaged workforce that truly believes that their leadership cares about them has less HR issues, less legal issues, more appropriate risk taking, more problem solving. And so the ROI on that, you don't have to believe the same thing I believe to like the outcome on the financial statement with an ROI like that.
Yeah. And I didn't just feed you that question, Jeff, because we both know that you can be more successful because your products will be made with greater integrity, your services will be delivered with greater care and attention, you'll love your customers more,
Yep.
and you'll do more than like we said a minute ago, that the law requires for vacations, holidays, and you'll give people time off for family events or on their feast day or something. You'll find ways in a Catholic business to do that. So I love what you've said. Let's look now at somebody, let's say, going to college studying business, somebody starting a business, somebody in a job in a corporation, middle management, maybe executive level, what do they do to make their place of work more Catholic? And how do they influence, maybe from the bottom up or from below?
Yeah, great question. First of all, no one can ever take away the part inside of us, right? Our joy, and our joy comes from Christ. Even in suffering and in tough times, we can still have joy. Our prayer life, all these things that you could be in prison and still have those things, right? So we could certainly have them in corporate America. I think when we go into a relationship, whether we're at the lowest level or anywhere else, we should be in a mode of questioning to understand why things exist the way that they do, because often we're going to find that there's not a good concrete answer. They exist just because they do, and there's a better way or a smarter way to approach problems, relationships, the architecture of a group. When you're very low on the totem pole, one of the ways you win is just by showing up with excellence. Doing our work with excellence is a way to honor God because we're doing it to the best of our ability and it's dignified, even when it doesn't work out the way we expected it to. And people notice that. People notice somebody who has that spirit of excellent work. On top of that, real eye contact, giving people that dignity of being seen, heard, and understood, even if they come from a completely different walk of life, that becomes a magnet for accompaniment and eventually evangelization. But certainly not coming in and saying you know better or that this is the way people need to believe. It's more of through the way that you walk every day and the way that you accompany people, they come to know you. But don't hide who you are. If you need to leave at 5:30 today because it's Ash Wednesday and you haven't gone to mass yet, and so you say, I gotta go, I gotta catch this thing, that's a lot different than saying mass is at 6. I need to get out of here at 5:30 so I can make it there. Like we don't need to hide that part. If somebody says you're gonna be politically martyred or you're gonna career martyrdom because of that, then thanks be to God. You got a chance to have a small martyrdom and you could probably go work somewhere else if you needed to. But don't hide the part of you that is truly doing things of faith and representing your faith. Don't be afraid of that. It's different than rubbing it in people's face if you just at least acknowledge that it exists.
Yeah. Let's take excellent point. I love what you just said about the small martyrdoms, the small sacrifice that we end up making, the little bit of penance that might evoke. What happens if this gets to the more serious stage? Let's say you're a middle executive or a senior executive, and the company says to you, well, you got to go to this parade on Saturday, or you got to wear this T-shirt, or you got to put this sticker on your car or on your front door or at your desk. You know,
Yep.
where's the point? I guess I get this question a lot. I'm sure you do too. Where's the point when you have to say, I guess I'm ready for the consequences?
Yeah. First, I would say plan ahead, right? It shouldn't be a surprise to us when the chess match involves the next move from the other side. If we
Yes.
haven't thought that that move might happen, then shame on us. I can remember having these conversations with my wife over and over. What if someday my company faces this or that? And the times that it has happened, I knew how to act in that moment because it wasn't new to me. I'd already been in that mindset of planning ahead. The second part is, and somebody just shared this with me the other day, I guest lectured at the University of Dallas for their business ethics class. And the question came up, and I loved somebody else's answer. It was about facing some of these issues. And it was, I see that we're participating as a company, or that you believe that participating in this thing is a chance to honor a different group or to show support for a different group. Is that true? Yes. Okay. Would you then honor and support my decision that I'm not going to participate in this just because this is where I'm coming from? It's not an anti anybody thing. It's just, could you support and honor me in this? Henry, you and I know a lot of people are going to give you some sort of backlash for that, but
Yeah.
sometimes you're actually softening hearts even when you're getting fired. You're planting seeds even when you're getting silently demoted in the future because of what you said. But oftentimes you find people that say, you know what? I actually really don't want to go through with this next step either. Or,
Yeah.
that's how I feel too. I didn't know that we could even have an option here. And that would be my theme of corporate America right now. People are thirsty for a different conversation. And people from all different religious walks reach out to me directly through LinkedIn and email to talk about some of the content that I put out there because they want something real, something that we can stand for, and not this wishy-washy, go with the flow, be part of the culture. It has no substance. If you'll go for anything, then you stand for nothing.
I saw this might be a little harsh, but I saw a meme during Holy Week that had our Lord being crucified, and there had 5 or 6 soldiers around it, and they had like a thought balloon in each of the soldiers, and one of them said, "I don't want to lose my job. I need the money. I'm only following orders." So
Yeah,
you can see
pretty good parallel.
yeah,
And you know
exactly.
what? That's our biggest fear, is that we can't handle something. You can handle anything because you have Christ. You can even handle death. So don't be afraid of what you can't handle. Just face the fear and do it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk just for a minute then about, we talked about the sort of the employee, somebody working in a corporate. Let's say you're starting a company, or let's say you have a business and you realize that you want to make it more Catholic, or you want to do a startup and you want to make it Catholic from the inception. What would you give as tips for, say, a budding young entrepreneur, or a mid-level company that's built revenue and market share, and but they want to be more Catholic? What does that look like? What would you say? How do they do it, Jeff? Give us the
Yeah,
simple.
so there's so many great resources out there, but I would say get a mentor and study up, because you may sit there and say in your mind, "Oh, I'm being Catholic, I'm being nice," which is not what that means. Being a Christian doesn't mean being nice, nor does Catholicism equal nice. One of the outcomes may be that people are treated fairly,
Yes.
but get the right mentorship or the right learning around understanding concepts like subsidiarity. What would it look like to actually give people true agency at the lowest levels within your organization, so that they can be formed and you can start to realize that work actually exists for the formation of man, not man to work? And then dig into some of those teachings by JP2. And then start to realize also that there has to be a higher purpose or a common good to what we're doing. If you are so used to, and you've been trained in business school and beyond, to say that profit maximization is the reason for business, you missed it. That is absolutely not a reason to live. Profit is an outcome of producing a good or service that's valuable, and a lot of revenue just means you must be doing it well. But for that to be the purpose is so shallow that you start to lose who you are as a human, and then you start to treat people again like a commodity. So digging deep into, why do I work? Why does my organization exist? What is the good, the common good that we seek to create? And that exists whether you're doing consulting work like us, or you're an accountant or a janitor. It doesn't matter what the service or product is. It just matters what's the intention and your desired outcome for your work. So find a way to dig into those things, and you'll start to find the answer. But there's a limitless amount of resources to go to, so that this is not just you out on an island hoping to figure out how does Catholic business work. And Catholic CEO podcast is one of them.
That's great. Thank you. That's well said. The My grandfather, my dad's father, taught his boys. He had 6 boys, and a bunch of grandsons. And we're in a family business, and it's a residential real estate investment business. And he said to us, the purpose of us doing this business is to keep the family together. And when I was a kid and a young teenager, we looked at that and we said, what does that mean? Like, we didn't get it, but now we do get it, and they're long deceased. My dad and my grandfather long deceased, but their whole point in having a family business was to keep the family together, not to make wealth. But guess what happened? There was success, there was income, there was a living for multiple generations, and so on. So I love what you've said about the actual how to do it. Let's
Now,
take a look. Let's do one more area for consideration. Uh, how do you equip yourself? You mentioned all the tools that are out there. How do you equip yourself with what you say? Let's say you're doing a startup. You're trying to raise capital. You're trying to get some advisory board members, and you want to bring Catholic culture into the business, but you're working in a secular world, and the capital, the angel capital, or the VC money that might come to you is not looking for a religious or a spiritual component. What's the language? What's the angle? How do you do that? If you
I
could.
love this. Two things I'll say to this. One is, we should always be growing in our walk, right? In our education. If we want to be good parents, study parenting. You want to be great at being a Catholic business leader. What are you listening to on your drive home? What are you reading for pleasure? And how are you creating context around that? Even what are you reading from how other people view your line of business or your view of the world, so that when you are in those conversations, you can have such well-formed dialogue and storytelling and use the right words, so that somebody who doesn't share your same beliefs appreciates the intellect, appreciates the potential outcome, appreciates even the visionary aspect of what you're trying to achieve. Henry, 2 weeks ago, my partner and I and a couple of our executives met with a company that we already gave a letter of intent to try to make a purchase of this existing business, 25-year-old business. 4 men across from us, first question. So you guys are some sort of religious organization? That was the question, because Undivided Life kind of has a cross in it. And my
Yeah.
answer, I said, yes and no. I said, it is our Catholic faith that drives us to do our absolute best in business and to bring that as a way to bless others through our business acumen. And we do that to glorify God. But who we're working with and what kind of a business is it, that we're looking to buy or build is not related to our faith, other than it's human beings that we hope that we can pour into and help to grow something meaningful with them. I said, so it doesn't in any way bother us or change anything about us regarding your faith, but it is absolutely our faith that informs our decisions and our path forward. And you could see the mood in the room changed instantly. And I don't know where this is going to go. I mean, to be determined. The lawyers are looking at the documents right now, but you could see a group that was potentially like, oh, great, here comes the Catholics from North Texas, is now saying, okay, what this guy just said makes sense to me. And it's interesting. These people believe what they believe, and that's a strong place to be from.
I love it. I wish I'd been at that meeting to see that, because it's happened to be in not in an acquisition like that, but in other places where they suddenly, it's like they relax and they say, okay, this isn't so bad. This isn't so scary, so
I got to tell you this, Henry. I give a talk on a ESG podcast, and it was really a United Nations something podcast.
mm,
And towards the very end of me talking about building great company culture, this interviewer said, where does this come from for you? Thinking I was going to say something
yeah,
environmentalist or something.
yeah,
And I said, it's my love of Jesus Christ and my expression of that love through the Catholic faith that causes me to want to create great organizations to bless everyone, including the least of these, my brothers and sisters. And people in the room started clapping because they had yet to hear somebody use the Catholic faith as a reason for something so positive, and it maybe had been weaponized against them or had been misunderstood by them. But to just be bold in that has created relationships from that moment forward.
that's great. God bless you for having the guts to do it, because that's how we follow our Lord. We do this no matter what the cost, and you did
That's
it
right.
publicly in a forum and an environment. And I know I work with accelerators that are in the clean tech and green tech space, and that is a religion unto itself. And then when we introduce the true religion, we've got sometimes a positive audience reaction like that. I
And
love
there's
it.
so many great things that can come from those areas if they're not so polarized, right? There's
Yeah,
great breakthroughs in technology. There's great ways that we can treat people differently from building great cultures. But when everything gets, forced as like a us versus them, or you're with us or against us, you're not in a winning scenario, regardless of which side you're on.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, here we are. We could go on, and we promise our audience that we'll keep these podcasts short and sweet. And so, Jeff, this has been great. Where do we find you? You have offerings. I know you give talks. You have other things that you do. So tell us, where do we find you? What are your offerings? What are you featuring these days?
You bet. Well, we love to do consulting. We have some incredible online leadership development classes, and I'm always kind of hitting up different talks and workshops that we do. All that can be found at the website undivided.life. So the name of the company and the website are the same thing, undivided.life. Just put a period in there. On a personal front, I'd encourage anybody to find me on LinkedIn. I write daily content related to exactly what the Catholic CEO is about. And I love challenging people on there, and that continues to grow. I've been doing that for almost 2 years. And then I'll just put a plug that someday, Henry, you're going to be on the podcast that we run called The Beatitudes instead of the Beatitudes. So the Beatitudes is a religiously funny podcast where we have a good combination of humor and holiness. You can look that up at thebeatitudes.com or any podcast platform.
It's great. I'm going to come and see you in person, because the Catholic CEO is headquartered in Sugar Land, Texas, and so we're in the Houston area. You're in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and we're going to. I think there will be greater collaborations in the future. But God bless you and your family and your work, Jeff. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again on our podcast. Thanks again.
God bless.